Thank you for accepting this interview. We are a leading YouTube channel in Turkey with 800K followers on intellectual matters. And ironically, we started with one of your books.
Oh.
One of our hit videos, first ones, was about your book Sapiens. So now, 4 years later, we are here. Thanks for coming and accepting the interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
I have many questions, but I want to start with something a little bit funny.
Okay.
I read on Wikipedia that you don't have a smartphone.
Don't believe everything you read on Wikipedia.
How can someone not have a smartphone?
For many years, I didn't have a smartphone at all. But in recent years, I have the kind of emergency smartphone that I don't go with, like it's not on me now, but I have it in the drawer in case, I go somewhere it's now impossible to completely live without a smartphone.
So Wikipedia is wrong at that point.
It's not completely wrong. I most of the time am without a smartphone. The smartphone was created by the smartest people in the world in order to hack our brain and grab our attention.
You believe that?
And because I care very much about my time and my attention, then I try to stay away from it. Because I don't think I can resist it. It's just too smart to be resisted.
Yeah, I can't even not touch it, as you see. Your book struck me when I first read it 5 years ago, I guess. It was crystal clear and it was telling a very big story. The biggest story of all, maybe. And you claim that humankind is evolving through stories. But your book is also a huge story.
Yeah.
So is it a meta-narrative? What do you think about it? What can you say?
Again, I'm not against stories. I
know.
think they are the basis for all of human society. You think about something like football. So football is also a story. We created these imaginary laws that exist only in our minds, and there was nothing wrong with it. The key thing, and this is what I try to do in the book, is to acknowledge that when you think that the laws of football or a country or anything, that they are not a story, that they came down from heaven, or they are just the laws of nature, then you can't change them. You think it's beyond your power. But when you understand, no, this is a story, we created it, so if it goes wrong, if it creates a lot of misery or problems, we can change the story. To give another example, more serious than football, you think about money or the financial system. If you think that money and finance are some kind of natural laws, then you can't do anything about it. Even if it creates a lot of poverty, or even if it endangers the survival of the species, what can you do? This is just the way things are. But when you realize, no, we invented money, it's just a story in our mind, we invented the rules of the financial system, we can change them if we really need to, this gives you agency.
So you want to change the story?
I want the ability to change the story. If you change it too often, then it collapses. Then nobody knows what are the laws of football or what are the laws of finance. But if you don't change it at all, then it becomes too rigid. And if there are new dangers or new opportunities, you cannot react to them. So we need this kind of flexibility. And maybe I'll give another example. If you compare, for instance, the US Constitution and the Ten Commandments in the Bible, both texts originally endorsed slavery, said that slavery is okay.
Yes.
The US Constitution, everybody knows that when the US was founded, it said that slavery is fine, you can have slaves. But the genius of the US Constitution was that the people who wrote it, they acknowledged that this is just a story we invented. We invented these rules for the United States, which also means that they included a mechanism to amend the Constitution. And eventually, the Constitution was changed to outlaw slavery. Now, the Ten Commandments in the Bible, they also endorse slavery.
But it didn't change.
And it didn't change. Because the Ten Commandments allegedly did not come from human beings, they came from heaven, so how can we change them? So even after 3,000 years, we still have the 10th commandment, which says that it's okay to have slaves, and we can't change it.
basically in your book you say in an elegant way, God is a story also, right? Am I wrong?
God is a word that so many people interpret in so many different ways that it almost lost its meaning. People fill it with whatever meaning they like. So religion is whatever people make of it. And they make of it very, very different things.
You are from Israel and I'm from Turkey, and we are run by an Islamic government for 21 years. And it would be very dangerous for me to say that, for example. So weren't you afraid? How did you run scot-free of this?
And the thing is that it's a very common idea. Even religious people would agree that all religions in the world are human inventions except one. Mine is not. But it's very easy for, say, Jewish people to agree that the gods of the Greeks or the gods of the Hindus, they are human invention. That's obvious. But not my God.
So were you threatened ever in Israel or anywhere else? Because they kill people for saying these things.
In Israel, so far, they don't kill people for saying these things. I don't know what will happen in 5 years or 10 years. We are now also under a very fundamentalist government. So who knows? But at least for now, you can say these things. And when people talk about God, one of my problems is that they don't take it seriously enough. That God is supposed to be, an eternal and universal truth. But somehow it becomes this tiny local affair that if the power that created the whole universe cares about who controls this hill. This huge universe, and he cares about a particular hill. Or he cares about what people wear, or what food they eat, and even about a particular country. And you see this kind of mixing today of, nationalism with religion, which for me makes very little sense, because again, in its ideal way, religion should be about universal truth. And nationalism, you can say many things about it, it is not a universal truth. It's a very, very local affair. If you just think about the numbers, the most ancient nations in the world, they are maybe 5,000 years old. 5,000 years is nothing. There have been humans on Earth for at least 2 million years. The Earth itself is 4 billion years old. And if you look to the future...
Not according to Christians. I mean, they don't accept that.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say to that. But and even if you look to the future, I mean, none of the nations that exist today will still exist in 5,000 years, let alone in 5 million years.
Probably.
So if you're really interested in the universal truth about reality, about the meaning of existence, how can you reduce it to the political squabblings of a few tribes?
Great answer. The question about stories, that's why I asked it. When I told my father 30 years ago, I want to become a filmmaker, he said, are you crazy? It's a bullshit job. Because in Turkey, stories are somehow worthless. I mean, for someone who is not trustable, they say he's making up stories all the time.
Okay.
There is this aspect for stories. You make up stories, right?
Yes. I mean, stories are a human creation. That's for sure. It doesn't mean they are not important. It doesn't mean they're bad. Again, when people think about somebody who invents a story, they think about maybe a filmmaker or a poet. But, the greatest storytellers in the world are the economists who invented money and who invented the stock exchange and all these things. These are also stories that we invented.
Yes, and you're a great story maker, by the way. I mean, it's a literary success, your book. You presented the world a huge, big history and story, and people are interested. I mean, there was a huge interest. And you spend your time traveling around the world and talking to people. You went to Davos when you were 40, I guess. So how do you define a story's quality? I mean, some stories are worse than others, and some stories are dangerous. So did you ever feel your story, for example, can be a bad one? Or
it can be.
A bad
Again, if people forget that it's just a story and become too attached to it, then any story can become dangerous. And the way to evaluate how beneficial or dangerous a story is really with a single yardstick, which is, does it cause suffering or does it help people liberate themselves from suffering? Because when all this talk about stories can cause some people to think that there is nothing real in the world. Everything is just stories. And this is not the case.
Yes.
There is reality. And maybe the starkest reality of all is the reality of suffering, of pain, of sadness, of misery. And unfortunately, a lot of the suffering in the world is caused by bad stories.
Yes.
You know, entire wars are caused by dangerous stories. So we should remember that stories are tools that we invented in order to make our life better. If we forget this and we start making life miserable for ourselves or for other people because of some story, change the story. And you know, it's all the way, you know, from a football hooligan that forgets that football is just a story. I mean, it's nice to play football, it's nice to go to the game,
It's
but
all
if you
made
start,
up, yes.
if you start beating people because of that, you missed something. All the way to somebody like Putin, who starts wars and kills and expels millions of people from their home because of some fantasy that he has in his head.
What was your motivation when you first started to tell those stories? I mean, why are you telling those stories? Because now you have your second tome of your book
Unstoppable Us.
for young people.
Yeah, so I also have this now series for children, aged say 8 to 12, which also tells the history of the world, but you know, in a simpler way, I hope in a fun and accessible way for kids. And part of the reason is, you know, history is often abused by politicians, by leaders, by political parties who just use history for their purposes. And as a historian, I try to kind of reclaim the honor of history, that we should know the truth about the past instead of just using it for this or that political purpose. Because understanding the truth about history is a key to liberating ourselves from bad stories and creating a better world. In many ways, you know, humans, we are all trapped inside the dreams of dead people. Stories that were invented decades, centuries, thousands of years ago that sometimes still make the life of people today miserable. Like in many countries around the world, you have, I don't know, a story about men and women, or boys and girls, which says that men are better than women. And they are more intelligent, and they are more courageous and more responsible. So for centuries, for instance, women could not go to school or university. And people thought that this is just a fact or a law of nature. And it took a lot of effort to realize, no, this is just a story that people invented hundreds of years ago and that people still believe. And once it was realized that this is not the reality, this is just a story, it enabled one of the biggest revolutions in history, which was the liberation or the partial liberation of women. So today, in most countries, women can go to school and can go to university and be journalists and politicians and doctors and so forth. And the really inspiring thing about this particular revolution is that it was extremely peaceful. You know, you have some revolutionaries like Lenin or Mao, or these type of revolutionaries, that they say, without violence, you cannot have a revolution. All these sayings that to make an omelette, you need to break some eggs. And the feminist revolution, the liberation of women, shows that this is not true. That you can have a huge revolution without using violence. They didn't start any wars, they didn't assassinate any leaders, they just changed the story, and this changed the lives for the better of billions of people.
Okay, another question there. You know the woke culture.
Yes.
For example, if I feel like a woman.
Yeah. Are you a woman?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
So-
God.
One of the things that happens...
Because it's also a story. I mean, if I tell about myself...
That's the key difference. I mean, traditionally, when I grew up or when I went to university, there was a clear difference between sex and gender. Gender was a cultural construct, a story, which depends on our beliefs. Like, what is a woman or what is a man, how they should behave, how they should dress, can they wear makeup, all these things are cultural. And they depend on what people believe and how people feel. And different from that is sex, which is an objective biological reality which cannot be changed just by what people believe or what people say.
Yeah, it's objective reality.
Yes.
You have the hardware or not.
Yes, and sex, again, also biological reality is always more complicated than the simple binary divisions that we try to make. But still, biological reality is not shaped by culture. And I think this is a distinction that is being blurred in the current discussion, and it's very dangerous.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's dangerous to deny the objectivity of biology. It leads in dangerous directions. We need to keep the it's partly some humility about humanity, about the power of our culture. Yes, culture is very important, but biology is still a reality. Now, it doesn't mean that it's always very easy to decide whether a particular individual is categorized as a male or as a female.
Yeah, binary opposition.
Yes, it also doesn't mean that everything that people say is biology is indeed biology. Lots of things that people imagine are objective biological facts. When you look into them, you realize this is not a biological fact. This is a cultural construct. This is a story. Again, this idea that males of Homo sapiens should dress up in a particular way, no. I mean, dress is completely cultural. So the fact that we acknowledge the objectivity of biology doesn't mean that everything that people say is biology is really biology. And the last thing about it is that biology is extremely liberal. Culture is usually the conservative one. Biology basically says or implies that anything that exists is okay with biology. Nothing that exists can violate the laws of biology. It's impossible. It's not like the laws of a country that you violate them, you go to jail. There is no biology jail. If something exists, it means that it's fine with biology. Culture is different. Culture draws certain boundaries within this vast field of biology, of how human bodies and human minds can exist. Culture draws a certain field and says, this is okay, everything outside, it's wrong.
Who defines the culture?
Human beings. Over time.
I mean, do you believe it can be manipulated in Davos, for example, by rich people or...
It can, but it's much, much more difficult than people assume. I think that most conspiracy theories are just wishful thinking. They hope that somebody is in charge, that somebody is running the world. They don't like who is running the world, but they still hope that somebody is in charge. The truth is, in many ways, much worse. Nobody is in charge. Nobody really understands what is happening. Nobody is planning and what is happening in the world. If you want to understand this, take a simple example, like the American invasion of Iraq. Now, this was a real conspiracy. You had the strongest superpower in the world, with the most sophisticated army, with the CIA and the FBI and all the money and all the airplanes, invading Iraq with a certain plan in their mind. We'll do this, we'll do that. And nothing went according to plan. Nothing. It was a huge, huge disaster. And in the end, the country that gained the most from the Iraq war was Iran. The Americans destroyed the traditional enemy of Iran and made Iran the hegemonic power in the area. So this is real life. Real life is that when you have powerful people trying to do something and they get it completely wrong. And we know it from our own lives. We make so many plans and they go wrong. So
Yeah, I
the
know.
idea that you can have these few people in a place like Davos, that they know everything and they control everything and they plan pandemics and wars, history just doesn't work like that.
I agree. And you're a scientist. I mean, history is a science.
Yes,
kind
it's
of.
a science. It's a soft science, but it's a science. I mean,
but-
we'll deal with facts.
But when you're telling a story this big, I will quote Donald Rumsfeld.
The great thinker.
But he said, we don't know what we don't know sometimes.
Yes.
The area you cover, the concept you are covering, the science you are covering is huge. So how could you be so sure? For example,
I'm not. I mean, about many things, I'm not sure. And I hope that when I'm not sure, I say it. Like, for instance, going back to the issue of gender and women and so forth, one of the big questions that I raised in Sapiens is why is it that in most societies men dominated women? And the answer is that we just don't know. There are all kinds of theories. None of the theories are convincing. The evidence doesn't support them. So at this stage, we just admit our ignorance. And I think this is the true mark of science. If you ask me what is science, I would tell you that science is the willingness to admit ignorance and then to look for evidence. The basis of science is not knowledge. The basis of science is ignorance. People who think they know everything, they are not scientists. Scientists are people who are willing to admit, we don't know the answer to this question, so let's go and gather evidence and investigate. Again, they are different from religious fanatics who are sure they know the answer to everything. They are also different from, just creators of mythologies or fictions that they don't know something, so they invent. So scientists, they are willing to admit ignorance, but then they don't just invent, they try and look for solid evidence, and if they don't find it, they say, we don't know.
Yes, but at this level, it's very difficult to be a scientist. I mean, you can't know everything.
No,
right?
you can't know everything.
Because your critics nicknamed you the man who knows everything. You know that, right?
This is what they say, not what I say. I mean, again, if you read my books, you see that on many issues, I either give several opinions, maybe this is true, maybe that is true, or I present a big question and I explore it a little, and they say, we just don't know. It's not just why do men control women. It's also big historical questions like, why did Europe became the dominant area of the world in the modern era? And why did the scientific revolution start in Europe of all places? Why didn't the scientific revolution start in the Middle East or in China? And after presenting several theories, my answer is that we don't know. Again, there are all kinds of theories, none of them is very convincing. And there is in history a very important element of chance and randomness. When you look with hindsight, it's always easy to explain what happened. But this is just hindsight. When you look, like if you ask, why did Christianity take over the Roman Empire and then became the dominant religion in most of the world? And I think it was random, it was chance. That if history was a movie and you could rewind it, and press play and rewind and press play 100 times, maybe twice Christianity would become the dominant religion. Most of the time, it would remain this small cult, and today nobody would know anything about Christianity.
Yes. When someone is talking about religion or God, how do you argue with him? Because he or she is referring to a meta-narrative. And he says, for example, this is wrong, this is right.
And very often I would not try to argue. I mean, it's a question of what is the context. And people have such different ideas about what God means. On the one hand, they will tell you God is far superior to human intelligence. We can't say anything about him. We can't know anything about him. And then the next moment they say, but we know what he thinks that women should dress. And we know what he thinks that you should eat. Or we know what he thinks you should vote in the election. This is the problematic link. That it's not the kind of abstract idea of God that is problematic. It's the way that people connect it to extremely specific ideas or rules, which creates all the problems. And, from my experience in Israel, if you try to kind of fight with these people and convince them that you're right and they are wrong, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I know.
The only thing that can really replace a story is a better story. I would say that you focus on telling an alternative story, which is better, which is more interesting, which is more convincing. Like, for instance, I'm gay, and I had a lot of arguments during my life with religious Jews about gay identity and about being gay. And they say, oh, God doesn't love gay people. And my usual response to that is, if God is love, as they often say, oh, God is love, and God loves everybody. And so,
Except gay people.
no, not just except, but why would God hate love? They often associate gay people with sex. They think that being gay is about sex. But being gay essentially is about love, not about, they say gay people are obsessed with sex. No, it's the homophobes who are obsessed with sex. And, if two men love each other, why should a God object to that? God would object, to cruelty, to violence, to things like that. Why would a good God have anything against two people loving each other? What could be the problem with that?
I completely understand, but a gay man, for example, at some point can love a woman. Is that what you say? Is it a temporary situation or is it a preference?
Again, like I said before, that biology enables everything. So you have bisexual people, you have people who are mostly gay, but a little bisexual. You have all the options. Biology enables everything. The key point from a cultural or political perspective is if two people love each other and they don't harm anybody, what could be possibly wrong with that? You want to spend your life with a woman and then you divorce and you find a man that you love, that's fine. You don't have to put people into specific boxes and they now have to be all the time like that.
Okay, here's an interesting question. Are you familiar with Turkish politics?
A little. I can't say I'm an expert.
For example, in Turkey, a lot of people believe that Netflix and alike
yes,
are part of a conspiracy to turn Turkish people into gay or lesbians.
Okay.
It's silly, but when you watch Netflix, somehow you see that motivation. Not that silly one.
But
they are not trying to turn people into...
Again, they just show gay people. It doesn't mean that it's not that being gay is so attractive that the moment you see a television show about gay people, you become gay. It doesn't work like that. Again, let's go back to the science. We now have a lot of research about sexual orientation. What causes people to be romantically attracted to men or to women? And we know many of the answers. Sexual orientation is shaped primarily by genetic and hormonal causes in the womb of the mother or at a very, very early stage of life. By the time you are, say, 5 or 10, it's usually already set. So whatever movie you see or whatever book you read when you are 15 or 20 or 30, it is not going to make you either gay or straight. I'll tell you about myself. When I grew up in Israel in the 1980s and early 1990s, there were no gay people on television, nothing. On the other hand, there were countless straight people. I saw so many straight people and straight couples kissing and getting married and whatever, and I did not become straight. So again, is it that being straight is so unattractive that you can watch millions of straight people and you don't become straight. But you watch one TV show about gay people, immediately you become gay. It doesn't work like that.
Yes, but actually, my question is it possible to shape the culture? For example, I think Netflix or alike,
Yes.
woke culture, is trying to change the story. So, is that possible or is
Oh, yeah, that absolutely is possible. I mean, what is culturally acceptable? Again, because biology is this entire room, and culture is just this carpet here. You can't go out of the carpet. So there is room to move the carpet or shrink it or make it larger. And this is what, not just Netflix, this is what all cultural artifacts do. It's also true with very ancient poems and images and theater plays. You see something on theater or you read a poem, then it expands or contracts the realm of possibilities in your mind. You see something and you say, hey, this is also possible. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it yourself, but it expands what you consider to be possible.
Yeah, but it feeds conspiracy theories bullshit like the one I told you.
What can you do? I mean, everything feeds conspiracy theories. If you run your life by thinking what would feed or not feed conspiracy theories, you won't get very far. I mean, if they want to create a conspiracy theory about something, they will do it, no matter what you feed or don't feed them.
So, you are very optimistic about AI.
This is the first time anybody ever said it to me,
Really?
that I'm optimistic about AI.
No, I read all your books, so but
Okay, so different people read it in different ways.
so do you agree?
Not. I mean, I think AI has huge promises for humanity, but also immense dangers. And at present, we are not managing the dangers well. And AI could lead to the collapse of human civilization if we are not careful.
Okay, a friend of mine, a professor of science and technology, wanted me to ask you, do you really know the technology? How are you so sure about AI's progress? Because you are talking about it a lot, especially in
Yes.
21st century.
And I'm not sure, nobody knows what will happen in the future. I'm talking about possibilities. What I do know about AI, that already today, it is different from every previous technology in history. It's the first technology that can make decisions by itself, and it's the first technology that can create new ideas by itself. We already have whether images or music or ways to play games that were created by AI and that are different from anything that humans created before. So this is the basis for my approach to AI. It's the understanding, okay, we have here something completely new. What happens when humanity encounters an alien intelligence that can create ideas that never occur to us, that can make decisions without asking us, without asking our permission? What will this do? That's the big question.
I think the problem is when you are talking about people turning into God in Homo Deus.
Yes.
You are claiming that privileged people will become more...
Again, that's a danger. I mean,
Yeah.
very often when I talk about the future, people take it as a kind of prophecy, that I prophesize that this and this will happen. I don't know what will happen in the future. I usually give several different, even contradictory scenarios, kind of trying to map what might happen in the future. I often highlight dangerous scenarios, like a small group of people monopolizing the technology to make themselves extremely powerful and dominate everybody else. And I highlight these scenarios not in order to approve of them, but in order to warn people, look, this could happen, so let's find ways to prevent this scenario from being realized.
Okay, last question. During 20th century, everybody was so sure that nations will fall.
Yeah.
This is the 100th year of Turkish Republic. It was a project to build a modern country, and they based it on nation.
Yes.
After that, everybody was expecting that nations would fall, but somehow they didn't, and a contraire, nationalism is rising all over the world. So how do you explain that? I mean, you wrote about it, but one more time in specific for Turkey, maybe.
I'm not so sure about Turkey specifically, but I think the key misconception about nations and nationalism that you see a lot of people and a lot of leaders thinking that there is a contradiction between being a patriot, being loyal to your nation, and global cooperation, as if we have to choose.
Yes.
Either we are loyal to the nation or we cooperate globally with other nations. And this is simply a mistake. There is no contradiction because nationalism is not about hating foreigners. Nationalism is about loving your compatriots. And there are many situations when, if you love your compatriots, if you really want to take care of the people in your nation, you should cooperate with other nations. It's like this in a pandemic. It's like this when we have to deal with climate change, when we have to regulate AI. I think that good nationalists should also be globalists, that there is no contradiction. People who talk about global cooperation like me, they don't want to destroy nations. They don't want to have a single government controlling the whole world. This is a terrible idea that can't work and is very dangerous. The idea is that no, just don't think in this binary term. It can go together. So you're loyal to your nation the same way that you're loyal to your family and your nation at the same time. You can be loyal to the nation and at the same time cooperate with other nations to prevent dangerous developments like pandemics or like climate change or like the rise of AI.
One last question. You have the same problem in Israel. Netanyahu is trying to take control.
Yes.
How do you feel about it?
Very bad. I'm trying to, I publish articles, I give speeches. The big danger is that you have leaders trying to take unlimited power to themselves. That's the key issue.
Yeah.
Whenever someone has unlimited power, this is extremely dangerous because everybody makes mistakes in the end. You can be very successful for a time, you can make good decisions for a time, but everybody is human, everybody makes mistakes. Democracy is the ability to identify and correct mistakes. We tried this, it didn't work, let's try something else. When you lose democracy and you give all power to one person or to one party, then sooner or later they will make a mistake and you won't be able to change it. And that's extremely dangerous in no matter what country you're talking about.
Thank you very much. Yuval Noah Harari, a literary star, intellectual star, was with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining us. By the way, our channel's name is Flu TV, and it's not flu, the disease. It's out of focus. So the points you talked about matches to our channel.
That's great.
It's always out of focus. Thank you.
Thank you.